I watched Texas versus Oklahoma. That's the Red River Showdown. And by the way, it's crazy. That game has been played 115 times since 1900. That's crazy to me. Now, this year, Oklahoma won 53-45 in quadruple overtime. That's not one, not two, not three. That's 4 different overtime periods. And Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt called the game. I love them. They're the 2 best broadcasters, in my opinion, in college football. Really only rivaled by the NFL broadcasting pair, Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. Now, this game was a chaotic, messy, fun, wild, crazy game to watch. Just one of those weird, jam-packed games where I guess really the theme here, though, was that there were just a ton of mistakes made by both sides of the ball, on offense, on defense, by Texas, by Oklahoma. Oklahoma fans probably talked a lot of smack after winning the game because I know that's how that rivalry game goes. But the reality is, in my opinion, if you know anything about football, you know that I don't think anybody should talk smack after that game. I almost had a point where I wrote down my notes. I'm like, I don't know that anybody even deserves to win this game based on how bad and poorly and ugly both teams are playing. Now, both teams had 3 turnovers. Texas had a punt blocked. There were a ton of mistakes, a ton of penalties. Texas had 10 penalties. Oklahoma had 11. Oklahoma had to bench their young quarterback, Spencer Rattler, at one point. This game should have never even gone to overtime, by the way. Not only did Oklahoma have a interception with 5 minutes left in the game where Oklahoma's defense picked off Sam Ehlinger with 5 minutes left in the end zone. So they have 5 minutes left. They have the ball and a 2-score, 14-point lead. But then Oklahoma went on to throw the ball on a 3rd and 9 where they should have ran the ball to keep the clock moving because Texas had no timeouts. They couldn't stop the ball. And what happened was by running the ball on a 3rd and 9, Oklahoma left about 40 seconds more on the clock than they needed to. And Texas took the time, and Sam Ehlinger took him down the field and scored a touchdown to tie the game and send it to overtime. Now, I want to talk first about Oklahoma's quarterback, Spencer Rattler, because he is insanely talented. He has probably one of the, if not the best arms in college football. Just arm talent is off the charts. And I really honestly believe that we saw Spencer Rattler grow up a little bit right before our eyes in this game. He got benched for a few series in the first half, and that was kind of a good wake-up call for Spencer Rattler where he realized, I got to stop trying to do so much. If you're an Oklahoma quarterback, you have this incredible Oklahoma offense. You're driving a sports car. Just drive the car down the road. Stop trying to do all this crazy stuff. Execute. Do the simple things. And once Spencer Rattler started doing that, he had a lot of success moving forward in this game. Now, one of the problems early on in the year for Spencer Rattler was he was dropping his eyes down when he was extending plays and looking downfield. You saw this a lot where extending a play, he'd drop his eyes down and just take off and run and miss people open downfield. Now, on that final touchdown by Oklahoma to take the lead and win the game ultimately, he stepped up, he extended the play, kept his eyes up downfield, found a man for a touchdown, took the lead, won the game. I love that. That felt like progression for me from Spencer Rattler. This was a game that, Texas, man. Texas could not afford to lose this game. Both Texas and Oklahoma are now 2-2. And Oklahoma, though, is rebuilding. They lost a lot of key players. They lost their quarterback. They now have a redshirt freshman quarterback starting in Oklahoma. And on the other side, Texas, on the other hand, so Oklahoma rebuilding. Texas, on the other hand, has a bunch of veteran starters. They have a senior quarterback star, Sam Ehlinger. And if Oklahoma loses this game on Saturday, I guess, not Sunday, on Saturday. If Oklahoma loses the Red River Showdown, nobody would be asking for Lincoln Riley to lose his job in Oklahoma. Nobody. People would go, oh yeah, okay, like that's a tough loss, but sure, you're Lincoln Riley, you're fine. Now at Texas, they want Tom Herman fired. They want to get rid of the guy. And I wouldn't fire Tom Herman. I like him. I think he's done a good job at Texas so far. And Texas keeps going through coaches like they're lighting a box of matches. They light it. They go, the fizzle's out. We don't like that one. Next one up. Like it's like a stick of gum or something. They just go through them like crazy. And when you also consider the fact that any college football coach this year is dealing with COVID, I look at that and go, I have a little bit of patience and a little bit of grace for Tom Herman the coach of Texas. I go, okay, if you're a Texas fan, I get that you're angry, and I totally understand, but I wouldn't fire Tom Herman. And by the way, the season is only 4 years old, by the way, or 4 games old, by the way. So we're 4 games in. Let's see how the rest of the year goes before you go crazy and fire the guy. Now, and by the way, and also, past accomplishments should matter. Like what you've done in the past. I remember, I'll never forget Sam Ehlinger when they beat Georgia in their bowl game. Was it 2 years ago, maybe? I just was like, oh, that's awesome. Good for them. So with that said, the number of mistakes that Texas made on Saturday, I think I've said Sunday a couple times. I meant Saturday. The number of excuses can't happen. You cannot have that many turnovers, penalties, blown assignments. That falls on coaching. And so if you're a Texas booster donating money or helping make decisions behind the scenes, I would say the leash got a little bit shorter, but I would not fire Tom Herman. As of right now, I keep Tom Herman as my head coach. Now, Sam Ehlinger, the quarterback for Texas, number one, love this dude. I love Sam Ehlinger. He might be the most Texas person I've ever seen. I mean, if I was designing a human being, like in a lab, to star in a cowboy spaghetti western, the guy you designed is Sam Ehlinger. He has the look, he has the vibe, the moxie. I remember when Texas didn't get it on the 3rd and 9, they throw the ball. They go to Sam Ehlinger. He just smiles all confident. I'm like, man, this dude is going to score a touchdown. I just knew it in that moment. And I love Sam's moxie, his leadership. He made so many key plays down the stretch for Texas in this game. I like the guy a lot. And he's going to get a shot in the NFL. I would want to coach him. Working with him, a guy with his leadership, with his mental fortitude, I think, yeah, that's the kind of guy I want in my locker room. And as a runner, Sam left everything on the field on Saturday. But I will say that there were not one, not two, but multiple NFL throws in a tight windows that Sam missed. And from an NFL perspective, you go, you win the game easily if you hit those throws. I mean, those are throws on film. You go, that's got to be made. I remember there's one in particular, down like a skinny post to a receiver. He just overshot it. The guy's open in the NFL by quite a bit, and it's not wide open, but in the NFL, that's open by a lot, and you got to make that throw, and Sam Ehlinger didn't make that throw. And that happened a couple times for Sam Ehlinger. So we'll see. I'm really excited and curious to see how Sam Ehlinger does. I think he's like a 3rd or 4th round draft pick in the NFL right now. But somebody's going to want him. Somebody looks at him and his leadership and who he is and says, I can coach that kid up and make him into a good quarterback. So it'll be really interesting to me to see what happens to Sam Ehlinger in the NFL draft. Now, I also want to share kind of the roller coaster of a game this was, the emotional roller coaster, because you saw Oklahoma's quarterback Spencer Rattler get benched. And when that happened, I lost all confidence in Oklahoma. There was a moment where Oklahoma had a tie game late in the second half, and I went, I don't know that they can win. Like, I think it was 17-17 at halftime, I believe. I hope I'm right. I guess that would be, yeah, because then 31-31 at the end of regulation. So, yeah, it was 17-17 at halftime. And I was like, if Spencer Rattler comes back, I don't know that I have confidence he can do the job here. And then later there was a moment where the game also felt hopeless for Texas, where I cannot believe this game went to overtime. It's kind of crazy how many opportunities Texas was given down the stretch at the end of this game. With 5 minutes and 2 seconds left in the fourth quarter, Sam Ehlinger threw an interception in the end zone on a fade. Oklahoma picks him off. And then you have realized, okay, Oklahoma has the ball with 5 minutes left and a 14-point lead. How does the game go to overtime? And yet it still did because of Oklahoma's game management mistakes that I thought are really, really weird to me. Now, here's how overtime went. In overtime number 1, you had Texas got a touchdown, then Oklahoma scored a touchdown. In overtime number 2, on 4th and goal, Oklahoma had a touchdown. Texas responds. They get a touchdown. In overtime number 3, Texas has their field goal blocked. And you're like, oh my gosh, Oklahoma's going to win. Oklahoma has this incredible kicker, Gabe Burkich, who is like literally an All-American kicker. He never misses. And you're like, this is an easy chip shot field goal. Like, there's no way Oklahoma doesn't win this game if they don't score a touchdown first. And Oklahoma, I think they kicked on like second or third down. I mean, they were not waiting. They got it into position, got the ball in the middle of the field. They're really close. It was like a chip shot 30-yard field goal, maybe even closer than that. I can't remember. And Gabe Burkich literally shanks the worst kick he's ever had in his entire life. And you're like, how do you miss that? I go back to, this is why I say nobody deserved to win this game on Saturday. Both sides made really bad, critical, embarrassing, shameful mistakes. Now, in overtime number 4, Oklahoma scored a touchdown. They also got the 2-point conversion. And then Sam Ehlinger threw the game-ending interception for Texas. It was just this game was a chaotic, crazy, messy, fun football game. And I guess that's the Red River Showdown. I mean, maybe the Red River Shootout is what they call it as well. I had a good time. I've watched these games. I've never watched understanding the gravity of this rivalry before, and I had a great time. I really, they put on a messy, ugly show for football, if you're like a football nerd, but I had a blast, man. The roller coaster as a fan was a great time, and I'm just glad we had two good broadcasters, Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt, broadcasting the game. Red River Showdown, crazy fun time, and in the end, Oklahoma won, but just barely. And I hope that down the stretch, man, both of these teams are 2-2. I would love to see them both do well moving forward and end up playing in the Big 12 championship. I think that'd be really, really cool. I want a rematch between Texas and Oklahoma as they both get better. I think Oklahoma's going to get better with Spencer Rattler. I'm sure Texas is going to clean up their mistakes. I would hope, because I like Tom Herman as a coach, and I want to see these two teams play each other again. I think it'd be awesome if we could have that happen. I don't know how that happens, but it's 2020. A lot of other teams could lose a bunch, and we'll see how it goes. So keep your eyes peeled for Oklahoma and Texas. I hope they rematch. I don't know that we'll get that, but how cool and crazy would that be if, in fact, we got to see Red River Showdown 2.0 in 2020? I don't think we will. We did last year, though, and that was pretty cool, so I hope we do again this year. I'd love to see that, and I want to see them play each other again down the road as those two teams get better and better throughout the course of this year.